Hey everybody, this is Moonbase Alpha. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Adams Armament. This is the Patrol 308 rifle that they sell. I don't recall the actual designation of this, but it is their Patrol rifle. I guess probably it's over here. Cal Multi Rifle Odessa Model AASF 308. So there you go. If you want to know what it is, that's what it is. This is a 308 caliber, more or less AR-10 carbine. It's a 16-inch barrel, and again chambered in 7.62 NATO. This particular rifle can shoot 308, 7.62 NATO, whichever you want. It is interesting in that it is a piston gun. It has a short-stroke tappet piston up at the front that Adams Arms is known for. And of course it has actually kind of an interesting rifle in that the receiver set is what they call maybe a short frame. I've heard it referred to as sometimes, where basically it's about the same size as the DPMS G2 rifles. So if you've ever been familiar with those, basically what they did was they took the receivers, they made them out of 70-71, which is a higher grade than 60-61 T6. This is a much stronger receiver, and what they did was they shortened it up. And in this case, they actually made a few concessions to shooters who are looking for a smaller, lighter rifle, and that allows this to be a shorter overall package by a couple inches, and also reduces the weight by a considerable margin. So this rifle here will weigh right about 8 pounds when you're looking at it without any optic on it. With an optic, this is right about 9.5 pounds. So that's a Bro BCO sitting on that, the 4X scope, and I will have to take it to the range, the public range, to really get it sighted in. I got a good combat zero with this thing, just putting a few rounds through it, and it seems like it's more or less on target. But I will tell you that the rifle and that scope are not particularly good matches. The BCO is like the ACOG. It has a relatively short eye box behind the scope itself. And one of the problems that I've had is this rifle actually kind of kicks like a mule. It's not what I'm used to when it comes to 308s. It's actually a relatively hard kicking rifle. And I actually got myself scoped a couple times when I was shooting this thing, because I was getting behind the eye box of the scope and trying to really get behind it, and the recoil impulse is so sharp off this rifle that it will hit you in the face. And I had to stop, and I had one of those really moments the first time I got scoped by this rifle. That's never happened to me before on any weapon system. I've shot 338s, I've shot 416 Barretts. I have never in my life been scoped by a rifle, but this one here, that recoil impulse is so sharp that it hit me. So I did swap out. The original buttstock was a SOT-mod stock. I don't like those. They're just too heavy. I think they're B5 Bravo SOT-mod stocks or something like that. They weigh about 12 ounces, and so I swapped it out for this 5-ounce MFT minimalist stock, and that really cut a lot of weight off the gun. And I used that weight and I put it into the scope and the iron sights. This originally came with no irons, so when you buy these things, they don't have any sights on them whatsoever. It's a cost-saving measure. I put some M-Bus Pros on this, although I will tell you right off the bat that the M-Bus Pros have a critical problem with this particular rifle. Again, it's a recoil-sensitive thing. What happens to me, I'll just pull this scope off of here real quick. This is an American Defense mount. It's QD. But the problem that I have is when this gun recoils, the impulse is so sharp that it will partially fold the rear sight, and it'll get stuck like that. And every time I have to take a shot, the sights work just fine, but I have to basically push the sight back up, and that's no fun at all. It's a real problem. I think I can compensate for that by actually switching the sight position. If I took this and spun it around to the other side, I would actually be fine. The recoil wouldn't necessarily hurt it. But that is something to be, to consider. These do not lock in the open position. I kind of wish they did. And I will probably wind up at some point pulling these off and putting a locking set of sights on this gun. I use these sights, or I'm using these sights because I had them, and that's it. There's no reason for choosing the M-Bus Pros. I'm not trying to get extended range with the adjustment here. It's just, I had them in stock and that's what I put on the rifle. So at some point when money is a little less tight, I will take this and throw some different sights on it. It will be something that locks open, and that's something you need to know if you're going to buy one of these things. You're going to want to basically realize that this is a high recoiling gun. One thing that I do want to mention to you, the ejection port cover will lock. Sometimes it does not want to lock very positively, and it will come open on you. That is an issue, I think. It does have a brass deflector, but the ejection port cover is, in my opinion, very important for the reliability of an AR-15 or AR-10 style weapon. The problem is dirt and debris will get into here, and if this very enclosed receiver gets any kind of dirt in it whatsoever, it will start to rub, and that will be a really big issue. The receiver fits very tight. I'm going to pull it apart so you can see some of the innards here. I want to show you the bolt and carrier. But the receiver fit is so tight, God, I just can't, almost can't get this thing open without a punch. I managed to do it last night, but you have to take a bullet tip and press it out. It is that tight. Let me do the other one too. I realize this is just amazing YouTube action right here, but you know, it is what it is. I'm showing you this because it is so freaking tight. Bow wow. Here's the lower receiver. Pretty standard stuff. There's not really a lot going on here. If you're familiar at all with AR-15s, this should be very familiar to you. One interesting thing, however, is that when these two fit together, you'll notice how the bolt and carrier group kind of extend out the back of this. This actually, when it fits together, this fits back actually about a ½ inch into the receiver extension. So kind of something to, I don't know, mull over. It's interesting the way that it works. This is the bolt and carrier group. You can see there's a little anvil there where the piston hits right here. And there are some fluted cuts on the sides. If you look at the cross section of this, again, like I said, this is all for reliability. They have a big old kidney-shaped ejector on there that's basically like having two ejectors. That's a really good thing. They don't have dual extractors, but you'll notice that this has got scalloped cuts. It's not like a sharp cut. These are actually rounded over cuts for the locking lugs. That's to help reliability. They've recognized some of the problems with the AR-10. The other thing is these scalloped cuts on the sides of the bolt and carrier group are actually to allow for dirt and debris and stuff to move away from the carrier group. So it's actually a really smart design. It is, I mean, I can't see anything on this that makes me you know, nervous at all. The machining work looks very good. It's a big old heavy carrier. It's part of the reason why it kicks so much. I don't know whether or not, I haven't tried it out yet, but the charging handle looks like standard AR-15, which is kind of weird. At some point we'll probably wind up trying to put an AXTS Raptor in this thing and see if it fits. We'll find out. That is my favorite charging handle. And this just slots in there like an AR-15. It's pretty standard. You know, it will cam itself forward here when it's, of course, it's locked. But you know, when it's outside of the buffer tube, there's nothing to cam it forward. So you know, because it's being pushed forward by the buffer tube and spring here. So it kind of sits out like that. It's very tight fit in there. But the parts and components on this look like it can probably withstand, you know, 308 abuse. There's a little riveted in steel feed ramp in there. That's kind of cool. So it's not feeding onto aluminum. I like that. I am not going to pull off the handguards here, so you're going to have to look at the other YouTubers' videos. Oh, almost dropped this. Of their piston system. It is adjustable, which is kind of nice. The barrel's pretty heavy. It's got a nice thick barrel in this thing. It's nice to see, even despite the fact that this is relatively lightweight 308. Again, like I said, the main complaint I have is that the gun kicks like a freaking mule. And I've got a lot of 308s at this point, and I can't recall any of them kicking this hard. You know, I've got M1As, I've got PTR 91s, I've got a Super Vepr, and I just have never known a 308 rifle to kick this bad. It is really, really unpleasant, and the recoil impulse is so sharp Like I said, it folds the sights, it will scope you in the face. That is not very comfortable. However, the gun is considerably lighter than some of the other guns that I have, so maybe that's the reason why. The majority of my ARs, or I guess 308 rifles, are in the sort of heavy category. You know, the M1A, big old gun. It's also a long stroke piston that helps kind of differentiate itself, and it dissipates recoil a little bit better, I think, on long stroke piston guns. Same thing with the Super Vepr. And you know, with the PTR 91s, they do extract at a relatively high chamber pressure. There is a fast-moving bolt and carrier system in there, but I've never really known them to be particularly hard kicking. They just seem like they have a fast cycling bolt, and the cyclic rate of the bolt slamming forward into the receiver, relocking, I think actually kind of negates some of the recoil. It's got an interesting recoil impulse. This, on the other hand, you just get this really sharp jolt backwards, and it's kind of unpleasant. The gun seems accurate enough. I mean, again, this is not really a precision rifle, but I'm certain minute of man is perfectly acceptable. You know, again, the sights are an issue with this particular rifle. It kicks so hard that it will fold those. So if you're going to use this as a combat rifle, especially with iron sights, you're going to have locking sights or fixed sights, as I may in fact wind up doing. Instead of going with this scope too, by the way, I don't know whether or not this is going to be the final resting place for this scope. I've been kind of trying to figure out a place to put it. I bought it at a really good deal. Military Arms Channel had a discount coupon that he was passing around for a direct order from Bro, and I actually custom ordered this. It is a 308 compensated reticle with a blue chevron on it, and I like that. And I have enough 308s that I really have been trying to find a rifle to put this on. This may wind up on my Scout Squad, or not Scout Squad, SOCOM 16. It may wind up on a PTR 91. We'll see. I don't know. But I don't think it's going to wind up sitting on this particular rifle. I would like to take it and see what it can do as far as precision shooting goes. But I have also a Trijicon MRO that doesn't have a home, and it may wind up on this rifle because this thing kicks so freaking much. You know, having a 4X scope on it, especially one with a very short eye relief, is really kind of a problem with a hard recoiling weapon. And you know what, as far as I'm concerned, reacquiring targets with that 4X multiplier, kind of tough, and it really does jar you. I want to just say a quick moment, or a quick note about accessories here. So this is an AR-10. Some things are proprietary. There's a lot of lower receiver parts that are. However, I think it can take AR-15 triggers, safeties, pistol grips, stocks, not the tubes. I don't think the buffer tube is AR-15. And the handguards too. I think as long as you use something that is like a carbine length handguard, this will fit. I believe this is carbine length. If I'm mistaken, if this is mid-length, you guys let me know. But this is just a regular MOE handguard. I like this just fine. I have no reason to change it out, other than the fact that I'd kind of like to have a key mod on here for work. But as far as I'm concerned, this is perfectly fine. It will take a standard 308 flash hider too. So if you have an AR-10 or whatever, what is it, the 5/8 by 28 or whatever it is, I can't recall exactly off the top of my head. The trigger's fine. I mean, right out the box, this thing's probably a mil-spec-ish, 7 to 8 pounds, extremely crisp, single pull or single stage pull, with a relatively short release. It's not a bad trigger. It's just a combat trigger. A lot of people really obsess about really light triggers. I don't really do that because, in a lot of respects, I consider this to be a combat weapon. And you know, for a military weapon, having a trigger that's kind of light is going to be a real liability. You're looking at negligent or accidental discharges, and that can be an issue there. So, you know, the fact that this kind of prevents or, I don't know, ameliorates some NDs, I think is probably a good thing. So that's all to the good. I don't intend to change out the trigger whatsoever. This is not a precision rifle, so again, something to be aware of. It does, of course, take the AR-10 SR25 Magpul PMags, and so that's kind of a really great benefit. This has really been the revolution in the AR-10 style weapons. To have a good magazine that's consistent across the board, that you can go into any store and buy for not a whole lot of money, this is a really big game changer for this particular system. The fact is they also offer 25, 15, 10, and 5-round magazines for this. That's awesome. That means that this gun can be a hunting gun, it can be a battle rifle, it can be you know, whatever you want it to be. That I think is really fantastic, and these are reliable too. They have no tilt followers in them. They are good quality components. They're very strong. They're very durable, and they're relatively affordable. $20 will buy any of the PMag Gen M3 308 magazines, and you're off to the races. I like the 20 rounders because that's how much ammunition comes in a box of ammo. It's kind of nice to be able to take an entire box of ammo, put it in a magazine, and not have 5 rounds left over. The 25 rounders are kind of cool. They're good battle mags, but at the end of the day, that extra 5 rounds has got to come out of a box of ammo from somebody else or from somewhere else. So you've got to open a box and then take a quarter out of another box, so 2 boxes of ammo. So this kind of works out for me logistically, and they're also a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller. So the big old 25 round mags are huge, and they're also a little bit more expensive. So I kind of invest in these guys here. You know, the 10s are fine, the 5s are fine if you're going to go hunting or you're in a restricted state. I know some people are in like Colorado and they have to have 15s. I wouldn't buy them unless I was you know, in a restricted state or trying to sort of obey some kind of regulation regarding sporting purposes and such. Anyway, you know, as far as buy, no buy, value-wise, I think this thing's pretty good. These run around $1,100. I bought mine through Bud's gun shop, and yeah, I understand there's some people who dislike Bud's for one reason or another, but I don't. I think Bud's is fine. The only thing I dislike about them is their sort of sales tactics. But as far as I'm concerned, this rifle showed up in good order. It's there's nothing wrong with it. It's a decent gun, and Bud's always treats me pretty well. I've got no problems with that, and the price is right. I mean, you know, if you're looking for a 308, $1,000, $1,100 is not too bad. There's not really a lot of rifles that can touch it for that kind of money. The only things that I could think of that would be any cheaper would be like PTR 91s, and those are excellent rifles, by the way. If you're considering investing in a 308 rifle and you're kind of on a budget, the PTR is kind of the way to go. The magazines are super cheap. You can literally buy 100 magazines right now in 2016 for $182 shipped to your door. That is, I'm not kidding, 100 magazines, 20 round, brand new in the wrapper, H&K surplus magazines. They're the last gun that still has affordable mags. And, you know, the PTR 91 runs off those just fine. Now that the PTR 91 has started including the paddle release for their guns, that's a huge game changer for that gun. I would actually strongly consider a PTR 91 GI if I was on a budget and I was looking for a 308. Now, if you're on a budget and you're looking at a 308, you might not be looking at the right kind of rifle because 308 is expensive ammunition. But hey, you know what? Some people want a 308 rifle. They want to have it in the stable and they don't want to spend an arm and a leg. That's not a bad way to go. The PTR 91. This is kind of the next best thing. Not super expensive. And again, you have a couple options in this price range for AR-10s. Another one would be the DPMS G2 series. I think those are okay. Those are direct impingement. That is the difference, and I think that they're a little bit on the heavy side. They have kind of anachronistic furniture that comes on those. I don't really care for like the SOCOM version of that, which I actually own one. Very accurate guns. They're super high quality barrels, and some of the components are very well made. However, they have cut corners on, for example, the handguard is made by UTG. It's a piece of shit, and they're also almost impossible to get off of, or get off the rifle. They have a red Loctite Delta ring that takes a proprietary tool that you don't have, and it's an absolute nightmare to get that thing working correctly. The other thing with the G2 is it has some non-standard parts in it that kind of make you scratch your head. The charging handle is one of those things. It has a special charging handle. Again, I don't know whether or not this is an AR-15 spec charging handle. I wouldn't change this one out unless I knew that other AR-15 ones fit. Because this actually has an extended charging handle grip on it. The G2 one actually has a regular size charging handle. It's about, I don't know, 50% thinner, and it's a much more difficult charging handle to work under stress. And I'll tell you that that I think is a big turnoff for me. I really don't like that. And the G2 feels a lot heavier, despite the fact that it's about the same weight. So That is something to be aware of. They do sell the AP4, which is a decent rifle, I think, but by and large, I would kind of lean towards the Adams if I was looking for a cheaper AR-10. When you start to get up in the $1,500 category, you can sort of add the Smith & Wesson M&P10. I think is probably realistically a better rifle. That is, you know, in terms of overall quality. And I've heard that the AR-10 from Smith & Wesson, the M&P10, is much softer shooting. It's kind of alarming to me, the amount of recoil that I got off this gun. I mean, it really is substantial. You also have M1As at that kind of price range, and frankly, I enjoy shooting the M1A a lot more than I enjoy shooting this. This to me is a very unenjoyable rifle to shoot. It's kind of one of those utilitarian, well, it's a battle rifle, combat rifle, but I'm not going to take it to the range very often because it's kind of abusive. You know, the M1A has its own idiosyncrasies, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a decent gun, and I kind of like it a little bit more than this. You've also got the DSA FALs in that sort of price range, and those are excellent guns. They're a little harder to hit stuff with. I think just ergonomically, I don't like the sights. The triggers on FALs typically are pretty bad, and they have some odd, again, some anachronistic characteristics that I think kind of puts them in sort of the old school 308 battle rifle category, but you know, they have some features on them that make you scratch your head. Whereas the AR-10 is much more modern feeling, but still, you know, the FAL is a proven, reliable gun, and it's actually, it's kind of a pussycat to shoot. FALs are not very difficult to control. Additionally, you have the Keltec RFB. That's another competitor that's going to be a little bit more expensive. Uses FAL mags. It's built like a Keltec, which, oh boy, I don't think we really need to go too much more into that, do we? Above that, then you're sort of in the boutique rifle category, and really there's no reason to spend that much money on the 308. You could get an LWRC Reaper, very heavy rifle. There's the primary weapon system Mark II, the 220, 216, I think are also excellent guns. They're long stroke piston AR-10s. They use a long receiver, and they're much heavier than these guns. It's part of the reason why I decided not to go ahead and buy one. Additionally, there is the FN Scar 17, kind of everybody's you know, love and joy. Everybody wants to get the Scar 17 right now, which is why they're selling for $700 to $800 above MSRP right now on Gunbroker. I would steer clear of those. They're very hard to get, and also the magazines are almost impossible to get. The mag situation for the FAL, the AR-10, the M1A, and the PTR-91 are all good. If you kind of stray outside of that, if you go with a specialty system, you're starting to look at proprietary magazines. Good luck. Right now, it's kind of a crapshoot. And the other gun I wanted to kind of mention that's around $2,000 would be the Robinson Arms XCR-M. And I like the XCR. I really think it's a great gun, but as far as I'm concerned, it's, I don't know, a little bit, I don't know. It's an unproven force, and I'd like to see Robinson lighten up those guns a little bit more. They're pretty heavy for what they are. There's also the SIG 716, I think a decent gun. They're coming out eventually with a G2 version of that. But for right now, you're kind of stuck around $1,000 with PTR 91s, maybe an M1A if you get one at a really great deal, and these kind of AR-10s that are sort of entry level. So the big disadvantage to this rifle here, I think it's a good rifle, but really the big drawback here is this thing kicks like a freaking mule. I've shot enough big guns in my life to know how to control a harsh recoiling rifle, and you know what? This thing just is super, super harsh. The recoil is unlike any other 308 I've ever fired. I've gone through the litany of mainstay 308 battle rifles. I've fired them all. I think that the M1A is probably the most pleasant of them to shoot. The FAL is kind of a close second, and I think that this is after the G3 in terms of unpleasantness. I would never take this to the range recreationally. If you're looking for a recreation rifle, sporting rifle, that sort of thing, no way, no how. Even a camping rifle, like a deer rifle, if I were going to take this hunting, I would kind of look at the SOCOM 16 over this, because the SOCOM 16 is an absolute pussycat. It is very, very light recoil, and this gun here, same barrel length, different operating system, it is night and day, man. The SOCOM 16 is so much nicer to shoot. It's not even funny. And, you know, again, the M1A has, idiosyncrasies, but I don't really care if it's gonna kick, like, I'm not kidding, it's like a quarter of the recoil of this this thing. And I don't know whether or not this is just really hyper overgassed or whatever, but it has a gas tappet system on it, and you'd think that a short stroke piston gun like this wouldn't be so harsh. But like I said, it's harsh enough that if you get close enough to the scope to actually get the eye box right, you will scope yourself. You will fold the sights if you have those folded up because of the recoil. It's that bad. It's not fun at all. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, for a recreation rifle, if I were buying this and I was looking for a fun gun to shoot, I'd be very disappointed. However, it is reliable. It is relatively accurate, and it's pretty well made. So I can't really fault it in terms of overall quality. I can't really fault it in terms of reliability, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's a good gun for its intended purpose, which is not to be fun, but to protect the homestead. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, it will do that. So I give it a solid B-. You know, it's an okay gun. If I had my druthers, I'd probably replace it with something a little bit lighter recoiling, and you know, it's a good thing that I have M1As, because that's what I would like to shoot a lot more than this. You know, it is still, however, a pretty decent rifle, and again, I would buy it again, I think, knowing what I know and knowing what I'm going to use it for. So I kind of like it, and I think it's a good gun. However, I don't think it's perfect. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. This has been Moonbase Alpha. Thanks for sticking with me for a pretty long review of the Adams Arms SF Recon piston-driven patrol rifle thing. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you later. Bye.